Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fins Faithful podcast. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Of course, we're live with you guys here on YouTube, so make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, comment on the videos, all the interaction I love, and it also helps support the channel and helps it grow, and I really appreciate that. But okay, June 1st is here. It's gone. Jalen Ramsey's still a Dolphin. I jokingly say that because it seems like everybody thought as soon as June 1st magically hit, he would no longer be here. But we'll talk about it. There's money involved, so it could be a day or two. It could be 2 weeks. Who knows? But we'll get into it. We'll get into the latest on the Jonnu Smith stuff. But also, more importantly, I wanted to discuss kind of what's really going on with the Dolphins. Their actions versus the words that they say don't kind of match. So I know it's going to be a tough thing to figure out because they are tough to figure out. But we'll kind of dive into that. And to help me do that, I'm joined by a friend of the program. He's been on a few times. That is Dante Collinelli, now deputy editor of Dolphins on SI. Dante, thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back. I think this is my third time.
Yeah,
so
third time.
This is the hat trick.
this is the hat trick, and there's always something going on. And there's never a dull moment, Dante, in Dolphin world, right? Like,
nope.
Just when you think this is a slow part of the season, the Dolphins hit you with something else. All right. Like you said, I haven't had you on in a minute. It was pre-draft. So let's start there. Let's get your thoughts kind of on the draft. I mean, we talked a couple times before the draft. You know, it's in the books now. What did you like? What didn't like? What surprised you? What didn't? Kind of your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins draft.
Yeah, I've spoken about this ad nauseum, so I'll keep this brief.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I generally speaking, I like the Dolphins draft. I think if you force me to put a grade on it, I think it would be somewhere in the like B to B minus range. I like a lot of the players that they acquired. The trade up for Jonas Savania, is that the player that I wanted in that spot? No, but I think he's a starting caliber guard, so I'm okay with it. Did I love that they waited, 3 rounds to make another pick after that? No, not particularly, but I would have taken Jordan Phillips at 98, and they got him in the 5th round, so I'm fine with that too. Overall, I think it's a really good draft. I like the overall. I like the big picture thinking of, hey, we're going to get bigger, tougher, stronger. I like that. I think that is a really good way to build a team. And as we kind of get into the, hey, what are they actually doing? I think this team is taking a more long-term approach. They're trying to change. They're trying to evolve. They're trying to shed certain narratives and long-held philosophies to change, right? And I think that kind of started with free agency, and I think they continued that with the draft. Would I like to see them get a corner? Yeah, 100%. I'm not particularly looking forward to the current cornerback room, but we'll get into that. We talk about Jalen Ramsey. So I have some like nitpicks. Not a Quinn Ewers guy, but he was a 7th round pick, so like whatever. Yeah. Good draft. I like the overall strategy. I have high hopes for Kenneth Grant and Jonas Savania and Jordan Phillips in year 1, and then we'll see what we get out of guys like Jason Marshall, Ali Gordon, and the rest.
Yeah, I think you said it best. This was a draft. This is a great draft. Like if they would have done it in 2019 or 2020, like this is a start of you're rebuilding. This would have been a good first draft, right? Like this kind of the I agree. I thought they had a theme. We talked about it ad nauseam, but like they had a theme of kind of getting bigger, not only bigger, but like girth. They wanted size, athleticism. I think they kind of met that need. You said, you said Jonah wouldn't be the pick you would have done there. What would you have done?
I mean, I would have taken Tate Ratledge, but like at that point, it's just like I have a different guard preference than the Dolphins. Yeah. And like I'm okay with that because, frankly, I was not overly convinced that they were going to take an offensive lineman with one of their first 2 picks. So I was honestly pleasantly surprised. Like the trade up value, I think was fine. People overreacted to that. I think I thought it was fine relative to most trade charts that you look at. And I like Jonah. I think he can be a tone setter up front. I think he can be a starting caliber player. I mean, he was just a little bit lower on my board than when the Dolphins took him. But, team fit, scheme fit. I like it. I just had Tate Ratledge rated a little bit higher. So we'll have to see how that one shakes out.
Yeah, interesting. Because interesting you say that. It's like when you talk draft with people, then you start getting in, okay, well, I had Jonah as my 39th player and Kenneth Grant as my 14th player. So
How about that?
that
How
was
about
pretty
that?
cool. Yeah. So, and I had Ratledge, I think around 50 or 60. What did you like? To me, what did you like about Ratledge over? I'm curious because I had him a little bit lower. I just think they wanted the size, the girth. They kind of wanted to set a theme, like coming off the bus, kind of toughness, and not to say, he's older. He's 24, I believe. Ratledge was, and he's what 305, I think. Jonah's in that 320. What did you like about Ratledge? Just getting on that talk over or Savania.
Yeah, so I think when I talk about like my board, right? Like I
Yeah.
scout for all 32
Yep.
teams, right? So it's not filtered through, hey, this is who I think the Dolphins should add. I think the reason that I had a higher grade on Ratledge is because coming out of college, I felt like Ratledge was more ready to play immediately as a high caliber starting guard, a player that you can plug into any system, outside zone, inside zone. If you want someone who's going to, bring you power both in the run game and in pass protection, I think Ratledge gives you that. I think when looking at Savania, you have a player that you're projecting from tackle to guard. So as much as I think he can play guard and that he'll be a good guard for the Miami Dolphins, that's still a projection, right? So, like, again, Ratledge to me was just a cleaner prospect. I really was impressed with the way that he returned from injury in the SEC and the way he handled those types of players. And then he tested out of the gym. I was so impressed with how he tested at the combine. Now, I would tell you that elite athleticism doesn't necessarily show up on tape, but I think you see a good enough athlete. And when you compare that with what he did at the combine, so Ratledge is going to grade out better on my board because I'm grading for all 32 teams. And he, to me, is a more complete player. But when you talk about Jonnu Savania and his fit with Miami, I think you start to see why they would prefer that player specifically to a player like Tate Ratledge. So that's why I don't really have any qualms with the pick. Like, even though it's a reach against my board, I'm okay with it. It makes sense.
Yeah, there wasn't a huge gap between those two guys, and it's scheme fit. Yeah, shout out to everybody in the chat. Kosa, Mario, the Dive Bar. Shout out to those boys. Check them out. I believe they're going live tomorrow, the Dive Bar podcast. The Fins Talk Sports Network's in here. Check them out as well. Gloria, how you doing? Everybody, come on over. If you're watching anywhere else, come on over to YouTube, guys. Hit that like button. Please subscribe and leave a comment in the chat or on the page. And I really enjoy the interaction and help support the channel. I know I got to say all that kind of stuff, but it's true. All right. Do you think Jason Marshall Jr., what was your take on him? Do you think he can come in and compete? Or is he – because here's my thing on him, right? Like, I saw him match up against a bunch of SEC receivers, and he started a lot of games. He's inconsistent. He doesn't love the physicality to tackle, and his effort is kind of weird sometimes, right? I think he's just – if he wants – I think he's got the tools in the toolbox. He has a chance, and there's an opportunity here. But where did you lie on, Jason Martin? He had the injury as well. He went where about you thought he'd go?
Yeah, I mean, roughly. So I had a day 2 grade on 2023 Jason Marshall. So 2 years ago, I think if you go back, if you're trying to talk yourself into Jason Marshall as a long-term contributor for the Miami Dolphins, go back and watch the 2023 tape. I think it's a lot better. You see the speed, you see the ball skills.
Covered some really good guys too.
Yeah, and he battled against some really good players in 2023. And I think you saw a player who could be like a CB2, CB3 at the NFL level. And to me, that's a day 2 player. 2024 Jason Marshall was an undrafted free agent grade for me. Yeah. I didn't really see it. I thought his tape fell off a cliff last year. He dealt with some injuries. He was wildly inconsistent. His technique was all over the place. So getting him in the 5th round, totally fine with that. I think, and you know this, when you grade draft prospects, day 3 is just total. You're throwing darts at the board. You could have a 5th round grade on a guy and a UDFA grade on a guy. And honestly, the gap in like actual number is not that much. Yeah. So getting Marshall where they got him, totally fine with it. I think it's an interesting dart throw. I don't know that I have a ton of faith in him being a contributor, but I do think he's going to get an opportunity because there's just not that many bodies in the room with a ton of experience. So we'll see what he's got. Anthony Weaver is a good defensive coordinator. I think he's got the ability to coach this guy up. The Dolphins have had some success with lower drafted and UDFA corners in the past. We'll see if it continues. Marshall has NFL tools. He's an NFL athlete. And so he
looks like it.
Can you tune up the rest? I'm skeptical. Clearly, the league is skeptical. He went in the 5th round, but it's a worthwhile dart throw for a team that, frankly, needs 2 to 3 corners to step up this year.
Yeah. And one of the draft part on this, Gordon and Ewers, anything stand like everybody's talking about Ewers sliding. I didn't think he was a third or fourth round pick. So like him sliding, I think he went probably where the league saw him. Did you would you have took a shot? Okay, instead of, I know you're a Jordan Phillips guy, would you have took the shot on Shador in that spot? I just don't think it made sense for them. But I know we're bringing old stuff up just because the first time we've talked.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I think from a football perspective, I would have told you that Shedeur Sanders is the best player on the board. But man, I don't think I would have pulled the trigger. I really don't think I would have. I just think it's a lot to deal with, and in a city like Miami, I don't know if that's the ideal place for him to really put his head down and work. I don't know what's true or not true about his preparation process. Everything I've heard and seen from the kid, it seems like, yes, he's confident, but it seems like he's a good kid. So I don't know what's true, what isn't. Some reports are he's, a mess. Other reports are he's really great. I have no idea. Never met him. I probably would not have pulled the trigger there. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to take in. I think the Dolphins have enough optics problems. I'm going to go with
in the quarterback room too.
Not even in the quarterback room. In general, they got enough optics problems.
We'll get into all that.
So I don't know. I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And anything on Gordon or yours? Anything you want to? You think Gordon's a guy? Because there's two spectrums on Gordon, right? 23 tape, 24 tape. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think he was as good as the 23 tape, and I don't think he's as bad as the 24 tape,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the outcome I'm hoping for, frankly, because if it's the 2024 tape, it's a waste of a draft pick. Yeah. So he's in the Jason Marshall boat. Day 2 player in 2023, UDFA in 2024. You hope you get something in the middle. I'll be honest, I have no want to see Alexander Madison take a single carry in the regular season. So if Ollie Gordon's the RB3, that's completely fine with me. I'm not going to complain. I'm not a Quinn Ewers guy. I don't really. Yeah.
It's a throw. It's a dart
in the player. If I'm being completely honest,
it's a throwing on the dart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah. 7th round pick.
We got to. Thanks for everybody who's tuning in here. We got a question from Daniel, real quick. I guess we'll Connors, the tight end. What are your thoughts on him, the UDFA?
Yeah, so I guess we can use this as a segue. I think whether or not Conyers gets on the field is dependent on whether or not Jonnu Smith is on the Miami Dolphins next year, frankly. I think and I think I tweeted this today, like looking at the tight end room, you kind of have two different positions, right? You have to think about the Miami Dolphins tight end room in two different positions. You have your inline guy and your slot guy. Jonnu's that slot guy. That inline position is Julian Hill, Farrell Brown. Those guys are going to play this year, no matter Jonnu's on the team, not on the team. If Jonnu's not on the team, the next slot guy up is Conyers and Tanner Connor. And I don't think that they're going to add a free agent tight end. And so to me, Conyers could get on the field this year. I don't think he'll take a lot of snaps, maybe in the 150 to 200 range. That might even be rich if we're being completely honest. But I mean, obviously it's a huge win if he makes the 53-man roster in the first place. So if he sees 100 snaps, that's an even bigger win as a UDFA. So I think it's possible, but it's mostly dependent on what the Dolphins end up doing with Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, it's a perfect transition, guys. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe, the little bell. Come if you're watching anywhere else, come join us on YouTube here. We appreciate it, and make sure you comment in the chat. All right, so let's transition to Mr. Jonnu Smith. I don't know about you, but I was surprised when that news broke. We went live probably a few hours after that. What do you think caused this? Is it he just wants the money? Like I've been told that he obviously wants a new contract. He's not asking for the moon. He wants to stay here. But I guess what I'm having trouble is, Dante, what's the value? Because I know we'll talk about what they're really doing, what their plans are for going into next year is sort of a soft reset. But what are you really going to get for a Jonnu Smith, right? Like, is it just the money? Like, you're not going to get, what, a 5th round pick maybe if you're lucky? And to take that off the field, unless they're going more 11 personnel and they think NWI, they just want to go with a cheap wide blocking tight end. NWI can do some of that underneath stuff. Because to be fair, Nick Westbrook is not really the type of receiver that Mike McDaniel would want, not the quick off the line of scrimmage, twitchy kind of separator. What do you make of it when you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of angles to this one. I think from Jonnu's perspective, I'm honestly surprised that he didn't ask for a new contract earlier. Like I was like going into the offseason, that was one of the things on my radar, right? Because this is a player who has a career year, and not just a career year, like he blew every other year in his career out of the water. Like it's not even close. 88 catches, 800 plus yards, career year in touchdowns. I mean, the guy was just incredible career year for him. He's going to be 30 years old by the time the season starts. If I remember correctly, he's an August birthday. He's going to be 30. He is a niche tight end. He has never had this type of success before in his career. He has to cash in. He does. This is his last chance. He's only going to get older. The odds of him recreating the highs of last season are honestly low. Not that he's still not a good player, but like Jonnu Smith getting 88 catches, man, that's probably not going to happen again, right? Like unless it's you have this weird scenario where Tua goes down and the backup quarterback's saying, right? Like it'd have to be like the same thing again, and like that's just not going to happen. So from Jonnu's POV, getting paid $4.5 million a year, he's the 32nd highest paid tight end in the sport. He's clearly better than that, right? Like he should be paid more than that. So I get it from his perspective. From the Dolphins' perspective, they don't want to give a long-term extension to a 30-year-old tight end. And I think even bigger picture than that, this is an offense that would prefer a different type of tight end. They want someone who's more balanced. It's nice to have the Jonnu Smith complemented by the Pharaoh Browns and Julian Hills of the world, but you're kind of makeshifting one player, right? You're trying to steal a term from Moneyball. You're trying to recreate George Kittle in the aggregate, right? Like that's what the offense is trying to do. And like, that's fine. I don't necessarily know that that's a bad approach, but I do know that this offense would rather just have one guy who can block and catch the football. And so for the Dolphins, I don't know that Jonnu Smith is in their plans long-term. I don't really know that, even if he had another good year in 2025, that this team would be even remotely interested in bringing him back for 2026. So it creates this weird dichotomy where Jonnu Smith needs to cash in because this is probably his last chance to do so, right? So whatever he can do to get up from 32, he needs to do. And if you're the Dolphins, it becomes a struggle because as much as I like Jonnu Smith, he is limited in value. He is limited in role. His touches can be replaced. You mentioned Nick Westbrook-Akine. I think that's the blocking end of it. I'd actually prefer Nick Westbrook-Akine as a blocker on the perimeter. Maybe I give his slot targets to Devon Achane. There's your twitchy yak guy, right?
Or Malik Washington.
Or Malik Washington. Or you put Jalen Waddle in the slot. You have, like, the Dolphins are not lacking for guys
Small,
who can
twitchy,
short pass and turn it into an 8-yard gain. It's the whole offense. They got 10 of them. All right. So, as much as I like Jonnu, if I'm the Dolphins and Jonnu Smith's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, comes to me and he says, hey, I want to get paid as a top 10 tight end. Well, you're pushing, $11.5 million a year.
Yeah.
And so that's tough, man. Like that's a tough pill for me to swallow as an executive. If you double Jonnu Smith's money, it's $9 million a year, and he's still not a top 10 tight end by AAV. So I think that's probably the gap. And if you're Miami, if this is not a player in your long-term plans, you could do a lot worse than getting a 5th-round pick for a 30-year-old tight end. It's a difficult pill to swallow. I've said this multiple times. I would prefer that they bring Jonnu Smith back. I don't know what that looks like for me. I'd be willing to pay him $8.5 million this year. That gets him to 16th. It's middle of the pack for tight ends. It's close to double his average annual value right now. To me, that's a good raise. He's earned that raise. I'd be willing to pay him that. I'm not paying him $10 million a year, though. It's just not, especially on an extension. So my guess is that's where the gap is, and that's why we heard that the Dolphins are looking to trade him, because if they can't bridge that gap, then, a 5th-round pick, you'll take that.
Yeah. And the thing is, I agree with you. Like, look, I'm not sitting here saying Jonnu Smith is Travis Kelce or Tony Gonzalez. I agree. I think he was a nice surprise last year. And I agree. I would give him something 8-9 million, satisfy him this year. He's earned that, right? I think he's earned that contract. Long term, I wouldn't go there. I think just people are surprised because we're coming off a year last year that they extended everybody. They made mistakes on extensions, so now they're learning their lesson, I guess. But to a guy who wants to be here, it's just everything they do is, he's one guy who wants to be here. He's not giving you problems. He's not out, we're keeping the guys, whatever you want to say about Tyreek, how good he is in the building. He's your best player in your team, and he publicly represents you in a negative light. Okay. And that's the problem. Because I keep hearing, I'm going to go off on a little rant here, but I keep hearing this excuse, Dante. Oh, but he's great in the building. He's publicly representing your franchise in a horrible way, and he's on the wrong side of 30, but you continue to give him chances. You continue to give him the money. You extended the guy last year who wants out. Now you're forced to trade. But I think where fans have a problem is here's a guy who wants to be here, but he is. But here's the other question. From the Dolphins' perspective, it makes sense not to extend him, right? Like, that's where I agree. But pay him, give him some money now this year. Would you do, like, in one more year? Like, would you do something like that? Two at 18. Work with me, Dante.
No, I probably wouldn't. But
Yeah.
I think you bring up an interesting point. And I did a full write-up on all my thoughts on the Jonnu Smith trade for Dolphins on SI, I believe, over the weekend. I think it came out on Sunday. And one of the things that I mentioned is kind of what you brought up there. The optics of trading Jonnu Smith, to me, are worse than the on-field football stuff, right? Like, I can talk my way around the football stuff, right? Like, there are people in the building that can do that role. The next person who tells me Julian Hill is taking Jonnu Smith's snaps, I'm going to mute. They can figure out how to replace Jonnu Smith's catches and his yards. I think you bring up an interesting point. What does that do to the locker room? How does that affect the guys in there? Jonnu Smith is a guy who's earned it. He's well liked. He's a leader. He deserves a raise. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve a raise. The Dolphins, as currently constructed, are not in a position to give him a multi-year extension. They're just not. And you can go back to the Tyreek Hill extension, the Jalen Ramsey extension. You can go back to not doing a good job filling the backup quarterback position last year as reasons to why they can't extend Jonnu Smith, why they're not in a position to extend Jonnu Smith. But it's really tough. Optically, it looks terrible. It looks really bad that the Dolphins are going to trade Jonnu Smith instead of giving him a small extension, if that's what he wants. Who's to say? But yeah, it looks worse off the field than I think it will on the field if he doesn't end up staying this year. I don't really know that not having Jonnu Smith is going to be the difference between wins and losses, if I'm being completely honest. But it hurts the team. They're not a better team without Jonnu Smith. I'm not saying that. Don't misunderstand me there. It's just optically, it just looks really bad. It just doesn't look good. And the Dolphins have had that problem all offseason.
I think it irks me. I agree with you. I think that was the best year Jonnu Smith's probably ever going to have. And again, this offense wants something more like a Tyler Warren, right? Prospect, right? Like that can do both things, can block, which is very difficult to find. Those guys are very difficult to find. So, but I think they can get away with it with the cheap Y, like Julian Hill or Farrell Brown, and have some other guys. Like I think the Nick Westbrook Inaya is the guy who I think could take some of those Jonnu Smith targets, right? He's that big body. I was surprised when they got him because I didn't think he fit, but I thought it's what they needed. So I'm not surprised. It makes logical sense. I think, like you said, it's just backing off the most recent events. It's optically just doesn't look great, right? Football-wise, you're not plus or minus many wins or losses with the loss of Jonnu Smith. I know fans probably be shocked to hear that. He's a good player, but remember, this guy was a journeyman, right? Like he went from the Titans, the Patriots. So I think we have to cool down on kind of the expectations and what the loss would mean. But I do think the optics are not great. And I think that's the biggest thing here. Ultimately, I think there is a chance they get something done with him, because I think that's part of the reason I think there's probably his agent put this out there. Because as days went on, I've got information like the Steelers. This wasn't coming from Pittsburgh. People in Pittsburgh don't think this is going to happen to the Steelers. Who knows? It could happen tomorrow. but like it's clearly they wanted the name out there and the market out there. Do you think there's a chance that this was a negotiating leverage by their camp to put that out there? Because it doesn't make sense for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I assume that most things tweeted by the insiders comes directly from agents. That's just like kind of where we're at these days.
True.
And so if you assume that about most things, it's very easy to tell which things do not come from the agents. And I don't really think that the Dolphins or the Steelers benefit from this information being out there. I think the only people that benefit is Jonnu's agent.
Yep.
For the most part, maybe the Steelers benefit a little. I doubt it. Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me if they get something done. It really wouldn't. Again, it depends on how much Jonnu wants. If Jonnu's trying to push top 10 tight end money,
I've heard he's not. But
if he's not, then I think they can get something done. I think that giving him an extra $4 to $5 million this year is like not that deep.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that depends on what the cap looks like after other trades and the Teron Armstead money clears, and there's a lot of moving parts. So this might take a bit, honestly. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it.
I think the longer it goes, the better chance they get something done. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the longer this goes, like I was thinking, man, when that news broke that Schefter knows something's close. Like if something was really close, that tweet by Schefter would have been the trade is done. Right. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been this kind of setup tweet for the next tweet, whether a deal or a trade to come down the road. So shout out to over 120 people we have in here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Let's get some more likes in here. And we're with Dante Collinelli, deputy editor of Dolphins on SI, talking Jonnu, and among other topics we're going to get into. Who, if they did move him, like, do you see, like I threw a scenario about a Darnell Washington coming back. Or, you know what I mean? Or, I don't know if the Steelers would move. Like, that would be this big blocking tight end who...
I mean, sign me up from a Dolphins perspective. I would think the Steelers would hang up the phone, would be my guess. But
or do they pivot? Is there anything Michael Mayer in the Raiders? That's a little bit more what they're looking for, right?
I think
Michael
so.
Mayer, right?
I think so. I think, Mayer would be interesting. I think, obviously, I loved Darnell Washington coming out of college. Yes. He's not quite the receiver that I thought he would be.
I thought in the run game.
Yeah, but he is a monster in the run game. I would be totally on board with him coming back. I would guess that the Steelers hang up the phone if you're trying to trade Jonnu Smith for Darnell Washington. If you are doing that as well, I mean, that would have to be straight up. Honestly, if I was the Steelers, you'd have to give me Jonnu Smith and a pick to get Darnell Washington, because I'm probably going to have to give Jonnu Smith an extension as contingent on that trade. Any team acquiring Jonnu Smith, I mean, why go pay? Why go work for $4 million in Pittsburgh when you could work for $4 million in Miami? Nah, if he gets traded, it's because he's going to get an extension. So if I'm the Steelers, that's Jonnu Smith and a 5 for Darnell Washington. And if I'm Miami,
I do it.
Yeah, I might do it. I might.
You're resetting. You're resetting the clock. You get a younger tight end. What is Darnold? Probably 25, something like that. So I would do it. I would look at the Raiders, but that's if they get rid of them. All right. So I see a lot of people. We're going to get to it. Everybody stay with us because they're talking about tired of rebuilding. Are we rebuilding again? We're going to get into that. But let's just touch on Jalen. When do you see the Ramsey thing? Because there's money involved, people. So it could take a while. He's definitely going. There's zero chance Jalen Ramsey's coming back with the Dolphins. There's a lot of stuff. We have Cap reporting that Jeremy Fowler reported that Ramsey bought a new home in Dallas. That's interesting. Sometimes you can read into that, sometimes you can't. But like, how long do you think this takes, and what do you think the return will be for him?
Yeah, I really struggle with the return, right? Because the Dolphins got him for a 3rd-round pick and Hunter Long. And it's like, okay, so he's, a few years older now. He's not happy with his contract. So do the Dolphins, because I think there's been some talk about how good Jalen Ramsey's been for the Dolphins. I thought he was a good player when he was here. He had some games that weren't great. He had the injury in that first year, but I thought generally when he was on the field, he was a good, solid player. One of the better players on the Dolphins defense, I thought, but whatever. So my guess is it's like a 4 that turns into a conditional 3, depending on if he plays X amount of snaps, or if the team makes it to the conference championship game or one of those types of conditions, I would be hard pressed to think that the Dolphins get a 3 straight up, just because that's what he went for when he was 2 years younger, coming off a better campaign. And so that's where I kind of struggle with it. So like, to me, it's like a 4 that can turn into a 3, or maybe a 5 that turns into a 4.
We had a mock trade show. I did some mock trades on one of my shows. This is one of them we had. 4th and Schumacher.
4th and Schumacher. I mean, sure, I guess. Yeah, like, sure.
It was we had that one. I had Sinnott from the Commanders, and like a 4th, and we give back a 6 with Ramsey. And then the other one was, one I liked was Clark Phillips III, and like a 4th from the Falcons.
That'd be spicy. I don't think the Falcons will move Clark Phillips because he's been sneaky
good
over there.
Him, bro. I loved him coming out. He's such a feisty guy.
Yeah, he's
so
been good
underrated.
for them. He played some ball last year. He's all right.
He split time with why is it the corner? He's been primarily their outside boundary backup, but he started a few games, or he split time with what's their corner?
It was Hughes and Terrell Hughes out there, right? Yeah.
So we had fun with that, and we had kind of Schumacher was. I kind of went off the Hunter Long theme because those are the guys that get moved. Tight ends get moved, right? Like easy to move, and they like the Span Ford kid in Dallas, who is turning heads over there. So I thought that was fun. All right, let's get into now everybody who talks about rebuild and we don't want to rebuild again, and what the Dolphins are doing. And shout out to over the 130 people in here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Dante, here's how I look at it, right? I see a team that on surface level, after year 5, whatever in the rebuild, didn't make the playoffs, albeit injuries, but injuries are part of the evaluation. Like Tua being injured a lot is a part of the evaluation of them. Like that's part of it. On surface, you'd think a front office and a coaching staff that's going to go for it. Like I thought we're going to get a desperate Chris Greer this year. I was like, man, I want to see what that looks like. I've never seen that. So we get into this offseason. Oh, we're still competing. But the actions are not there. We thought they're going to load up in the draft. I like what they did, but they had a big gap from 39 to 143. They haven't been aggressive in the cornerback market to fill that hole. They didn't sign big free agents. And some of this I agree with. Ramsey is out the door. Jonnu Smith, look, whether we think it's a negotiating tactic or not, they're at least considering moving off him. They don't want to sign him long term. So what that tells me is privately and quietly somebody's saying, hey, the bank's closed. We're getting out of hand. We got out of hand last year. We signed everybody, got an extension. Whoever can't walk to that door got an extension. We got to settle down here because it's gonna put us in cap hell, and we're gonna hit a wall that we don't want to see. So the question becomes then, and the most concerning thing that I find is they tried both ways. They tried to load up on the draft picks, the rebuild. I thought they left the train too early, Dante. I thought they should have stayed on that track. I thought, trading for everybody and their mother last year or the year before and the year before who was available in trades, I thought that was a mistake. I think they should have kept with the draft, regardless of what you think of Greer. Then they went the other way. Got old, the Rams after picks. Didn't work either. So now they're kind of, okay, we were too old. We made a mistake. Let's close the bank. Let's reset our books. Let's load up on some 26 picks. And let's still try to win and be competitive. So that tells me Chris Greer's fine. What it tells me is I feel bad for Mike McDaniel because I think they're setting him up here to be the fall guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a switching with Anthony Weaver midseason if things don't go right. So what are they telling us and what are they doing? What direction do you see them going in? Do you see them, and what does that tell you about the future of the quarterback, the future of the coach? Like, it's just conflicting actions going on. So I know it's hard to figure out, but I'm trying to figure out as we speak, and I sit here and think about it. What direction do you think they're going? Like, what is their plan going into? Because they can't think they're competing for Super Bowl this year. Like, what do you think their plan is going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that you learn when you cover a team for X amount of years, especially when you're dealing with coaches and GMs, is that you kind of take everything that they say at face value with a grain of salt, right? Like your actions are significantly more important to me than whatever you say when you're at a press conference, generally speaking, right? So I think when you look at the Dolphins' actions, I think you see a team that is being very reactive to their mistakes, right? And so that can have a positive or a negative connotation, but you see them not handing out contracts willy-nilly. They're not trading for star players. They are investing in trench players in the draft, something they haven't done in a few years. They are signing bigger players on the perimeter, like a Nick Westbrook-Akine, like a Pharaoh Brown, right? Like these are low-level deals, but they show a change in, okay, they are reacting to what they did last year. Another like smaller example is they brought Jordan Poyer in as kind of this veteran 1-year low ball contract to play safety last year, and it went terribly. And so this year they said before the draft, hey, we're comfortable with the safety room as is. We're not going to go sign a Justin Simmons, a Marcus Williams, one of those players. Now, maybe they rethink that after OTAs. Maybe that changes in a few weeks. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't have sources, but what it tells me is that this team is trying to, like you said, they're trying to reset the books. They're trying to change the things that were wrong with them that held them back against good competition in recent years. They're trying to get bigger. They're trying to get stronger. They're investing less in a top-heavy roster. They're trying to be deeper across the board. And so, a lot of people say, well, is it a rebuild? Honestly, I don't know. It depends on your definition of rebuild. Me personally, it doesn't fit my definition of rebuild.
Same.
I think if it's a rebuild, the coach, the GM, and the quarterback are gone, or at least two of those three guys are gone. The Dolphins are bringing back all three of those guys, and we can gripe about whether or not that was a good decision for each individual person, yada, 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 whatever. That could be its own podcast. But they're bringing all those guys back. So to me, it's a retooling. It's a, hey, we are going to try to do things differently. We've been hitting our head against the same brick wall for 3 years in this era. Year 4 it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah, we have some of the, we still have the identity of being this speed team that's going to put up a lot of points. But hey, defensively, we're bigger. We have more size. We're a bit stronger up the middle, right? Like you look up the middle, ideally it's going to be Zach Sealer, Kenneth Brandt, Jordan Brooks. It's pretty good. There's some tough players, right? And so, that's a good start. Offensively, they spend the only big money contract they give out in free agency goes to James Daniels. They trade up a really aggressive move for Jonas Savania. We covered why, he's such a powerful physical player. So to me, it's a retooling. And again, like this gets into semantics, but generally, whether you want to call it a retool or a rebuild, they are looking ahead to the future. They are trying to put this team in a position to where they are in 2026, whether they win 10 games this coming year and everybody stays again, or they win 6 games and everyone's fired. 2026, they're in a position to make those bigger splash moves. I think the thing that fans don't want to hear is that I think this was going to happen no matter what. You can only spend so much money, throw draft capital to the wind for so long. We've seen both ends of that spectrum. If you want to look at the Les Snead Rams, right? Like they said, screw them picks for years. And they got a Super Bowl out of it. Their window was about 3 to 4 years, and now they've become a really draft-heavy team. And then you look at the Saints, who said, screw them picks. We're going to pay everyone $1 bajillion, no matter what age they are or whatever. And they're terrible, and they've done nothing for, 4 to 6 years, and now they have Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. And so those are the two ends of the spectrum, right? Like that's where that type of aggressive spending and trading gets you. And so to me, the Dolphins were always going to have to, have that, come to God moment at some point. They chose it to be this year. Is that a good decision? I don't know. We'll have to see how the season plays out. What I'll tell you, it's a strange decision because Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel just had the worst year of their
that's the
tenure.
point. Yeah.
So, like, here's the thing: is like I can sit here and justify it all day. I love team building. I love getting into the dynamics of that. I think what the Dolphins are doing are really interesting, but like, it's strange. It's really weird timing, and it's hard not to look into it and say, "Oh, well, Chris Greer's safe," and it's like, okay, well, that's strange too. Why is that the case? And honestly, I would tell you, I think McDaniel probably is safe too. I don't really see the purpose of breaking those two guys up if you're going to let them reset the roster in 2025. So unless this team, wins 4 games next year, I don't know. It's really strange. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think ultimately what they're betting on is the team, the coaches, the guys that are returning are going to be really, really motivated, and they are going to turn it up a notch, and they're going to surprise people this year. I think that's what they're betting on. Yeah. But like, regardless of that, what they've done this offseason through the draft, through free agency, through contracts, it's about the future. They're trying to reset their books, and I don't really think that's a bad strategy. It's just strange timing.
Yeah, and I think too is, look, Tua gives you a floor. I think they're hoping they stay healthy. I think they believe in that building they can compete with a healthy Tua, Tyreek motivated. I think those two guys, they give you a floor. Like this team, that's why it's not a rebuild. A rebuild is if you got rid of Tua, you got rid of Tyreek, you got rid of those guys, you traded Waddle for a first-round pick, whatever. This is something, again, that teams go through. It cycles. However, you're the Rams. You come off when you do it, you can't miss the playoffs.
Right. That's what makes it strange.
Because if you're going to do this, you get rid of your general manager and the coach. You start again with this exact type draft and a new philosophy and getting bigger, more physical up front because the previous regime and coach didn't accomplish that. The problem I think I have, Dante, is this is like the 3rd or 4th time they're going to let Greer fix things. Like if they let, because it's clear they're taking a step back this year in 26. Now, again, if Tua stays healthy, Dante, they're going to be a 9-win team, right? 8 worst 8 wins, right? Probably, correct? He gives you a floor. I think Tua, the question where his ceiling raises, but I know he's a floor raiser, right? That's Tua. And Tyreek, we'll see. He lost some weight. I don't buy anything he says because, whatever. But the question is, then that tells me you're going to let these guys do it again. And if 26, let's say Tua gets hurt, and in 26 you're going to let Greer pick another quarterback or McDaniel pick another quarterback, like they're just, everything is going like this. It just, nothing makes sense. So that's why I asked the question. And I think you said it. It's probably what we don't want to hear. It's probably because I can't fathom that as this Stephen Ross would let this happen again. That's probably why we're asking, what are they doing? But I think you're right. I think McDaniel's leash is shorter than maybe we're giving credit for, maybe than you think. I think if it goes south, he's the guy who's going to get the fall. I do think Greer, watch out for Greer being kind of repositioned in kind of a new role, and then you get another GM in here, and that kind of says, oh, okay, people who don't like Greer, oh, okay, he's not the GM anymore. Which I actually think in a weird way, Greer's better in like a facilitator, CEO kind of role where he's not making singular decisions because that's not his strength. He's not a guy who has conviction. So let's say you let a Marvin Allen do it. But yeah, I think that's the difference is the Rams can do the cycle, but you just came off an 8-win season and no playoffs. It's shocking to me. That probably tells you, Dante, that their jobs are pretty safe. Like we keep asking about it, but look at the actions. If Chris Greer, if his job wasn't safe, there's no way he would let this happen. There was no way they'd be getting rid of Ramsey, and he'd be like, "Screw Mike, figure it out. You're the coach." You know what I mean? You agree with that, right?
Yeah, I do. I think again, it's strange timing, right? If they had won a playoff game or two last year and they had to reset the books because they had to reset the books, okay, right? Like it's weird when the owner had to put out a statement at the end of the year saying, hey, we're bringing these guys back, because that usually means that the owner is thinking about people keep telling them that, hey, maybe they're not going to be back, right? And
he hears the noise.
Yeah, and so I think the timing of it's strange. I think a lot of people look at it and they go, oh, the Dolphins stink and they're not going to be good and we're rebuilding again. And I think, unfortunately, this was going to happen one way or another. It's just it happening after you have, like you said, an 8-win season in which, you're you lose a deeply unserious game in Week 17, even though
Yeah.
I know the Broncos beat up on the Chiefs backups. The Dolphins were never going to be in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to beat the Jets in that game with your season on the line. You got to put a better effort than that. Like, you end the game on this like really sour note. You're really top heavy. You make this announcement that everyone's going to be back. It's weird timing. But I'll be honest, I think I would prefer that than to what the Saints have done, because the Saints are a team that are in that similar position, right? They've been 8-9 win team. They don't win the division. They rarely make the playoffs. If they do make the playoffs, they don't win a playoff game. And they just keep banging their head against the same wall. So I would prefer what the Dolphins are going to try to do this year, which is change their identity a bit, retool, try to win in different areas than they've won before, and see if they can't edge out 10 wins in a playoff game. Like, I would prefer that than whatever the Saints are trying to do. But again, like, it's weird timing, because I think this team does need to improve, and on paper, it's worse.
Yeah, it is worse. I mean, you think they try to like give it a little bit of go this year, try to save face, and then maybe the next year they blow the whole thing up if it doesn't work out. But it's just not what I expected. And I guess, and I agree with you. And I agree. I'd rather do this than what the Saints are doing. I have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, you could be the Saints, right? That's you could always be worse, because they're just.
That's the other end of the spectrum, man.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you spend forever and you don't care. You need to take these reset years eventually, right? Like, if it wasn't going to be this year, it was going to be next year. Like, the Dolphins were going to have to clean some things up at some point.
I just think with the record they had, not having won a playoff game, the reset would have a new regime. I think that's probably
but that's not the universe we live in. So,
all right. So, how do you feel this season? You saw the schedule. What is your outlook? Are you see best case scenario for this team is kind of 9-10 wins?
I think so. I mean, I think this is a team that wins somewhere between 8 and 10 games. Whether that, obviously that makes a big difference. 8 and 9, you're probably not making the postseason. If you're a 10-win team, you are probably like a 5 seed. You might, if something happens to Buffalo, you might sneak a division title. Chances are super low, but it's possible, at least with 10 wins. So I think that's where the Dolphins are. They feel like an 8 to 9 to 10 win team. To me, at least. Obviously, I think there's a difference between, a 9-win team that sneaks into the postseason that's better built for postseason football. And I think that's what the Dolphins are going for. I think they're trying to sneak in for a wild card game, be a competitive team. And then they're hoping that, hey, they're going to be better built for that type of football this year. And they're going to play better in the playoffs and give a good team a run and possibly steal a game. I think that's what they're going for. And again, like, that is fine, I guess. Like, I don't know how that makes me feel, like, personally. Like, I think it's okay. Like, sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think the way you're exactly what you think is exactly what's going on in their head. They, and I will say with the additions, like, there is I'm hoping they do a little bit more power running scheme, a little more inside zone, a little less outside zone, maybe Jonnu, maybe Ollie Gordon, because I don't know how you feel about Ollie Gordon as an outside stretch zone back. I'm not, he can do it. I've seen him do it, but speed is a big deal with these backs, the 49ers and all the Dolphins are speed guys. But, so I'm hoping, I do think if they do miraculously make the playoffs, or they could sneak in, it's not miraculous. I mean, there's talent. I think they are a little bit more well-equipped to kind of play a better playoff style game, make it be closer and kind of, because they got more physical in the draft. Their first 2 picks absolutely made them more physical. And I agree, about 9 to 10 wins is a ceiling for me. And I also think too is they're telling Mike McDaniel, hey, this is what you got, man. Like, this is what we can do. We tried it your way. We have to kind of fix the books and the money and kind of make sure we don't keep pushing the credit card down here. This is what you got. Make it work. And if you can't, you can't. Then we got a defensive coordinator here who's hungry to take over the head coaching position. So what do you put we'll end on this, because I know I don't want to keep you too long here. But, like, what do you think is the percentage that Mike McDaniel is not the head coach when they come back from Madrid?
Oh. I think it's pretty low. I don't really think the Dolphins are going to be bad enough that he gets a midseason firing. I really
Especially
don't.
that first 8 games, they're not too
Yeah,
bad. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be bad enough. I really don't. I'm not saying I think the season's going to go great or anything like that. I'm not saying he will get fired after the season, but I have a hard time believing that the Dolphins are going to be. I mean, the Madrid game's what, week 11? I mean, they'd have to be what, like,
they got a 3-game stretch going in. There's, I think
right,
they have Baltimore, Buffalo, and Washington.
But even coming out of that, right, like to fire your head coach mid-season, I mean, they'd have to be what, like 3-8?
The thing is, Dante, listen,
like they're not going to be 4-7. They're not that bad.
No, they're not. And the thing is, I think Patrick Paul, as much as I hated the pick, I think he'll get by. He's good enough, and I think they improved on the interior of the offensive line. And I think their plan, and this is what I heard from the very beginning of the free agency, is they're relying on the front seven. So it didn't surprise me they didn't go corners because they really wanted to emphasize they believe the front seven, the pressure kind of leaves, especially if they do some zone stuff, will leave some of the pressure. But you got to have something back there. I don't want the cornerback room, Dante. I joked about this to become the new offensive line room. You guys are more. It's starting to become that, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's not looking too great. It's not looking too great. We'll see what the Jalen Ramsey trade turns out. But
yeah, you don't like Cam Smith and Jason Marshall Jr.?
No, not particularly. I mean, I'd tell you the two best corners in the room are Kohu and Duck.
Yeah,
which
Kohu and Duck, is that? That's all you need to know, right?
Yep.
So we'll leave it at that, Dante. I appreciate it. You coming on again. Before you go, plug everything you have and where they can find you, what you got going on, Dante.
Yeah, so if you're a Dolphins fan, please check out Dolphins on SI. I write a couple stories every single day. So you can find my work as well as Elaine Poupart's work, who runs the site. He's awesome. Ton of content. We're always up to date. We're always doing new stuff. And then if you would also be gracious enough to check out the Wide Left Substack run by Arif Hastan. I'm doing some editing work there. It's really, really deep, in-depth football content. We did a like 8,000 word story on the second year receivers and re-ranking them. So it's that type of like long form, in-depth football content, if that's your type of thing. And then I have my own Substack as well, the Casual Draft Analyst. I'm going to start summer scouting in the next week. I would say I'm hoping to. I set up my database today. I got to go track down tape, which is always a good time. Yeah. So hoping to start that as well. So if you could check those out, it would mean a lot to me. And thanks for having me on again, man.
Yeah. Please, guys, sincerely, go check out. I'll try to put some links in the description box after the show. Dante does great work. I followed Dante for a while, especially the draft. Not only that, just his writing. He does unbelievable work. So make sure you follow him. And before you guys leave here, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, comment, leave a comment in the chat or in the YouTube page. We appreciate it. We got a big week coming up. Some big guests. Can tease you a little bit. It's a very big guest. So we might be having if you guys caught what I'm saying. Shout out Glory, just said she followed you, Dante. So yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, follow Dante and all his great work, and we will catch you. We have a few more shows this week, I believe. So stay busy to the social media. We'll announce all the guests that we have. As always, guys, stay Fins faithful and Fins up. We are out.